Hi everyone, it's Lindsay. I'm back today with a video on stamp layering with Joy Clair Stamps. I'm going to be using the brand new Christmas coffee stamp set. It has these great images in it that you can layer up to create these really beautiful coffee cups. So you can use that coffee cup on its own, or you can layer in the two patterns. It also has two hollies, different sizes, holly leaves. Then you have two coffee beans, different sizes, which you can use as the holly berries. You've got a little steam and a bunch of sentiments you can build up. So I'm starting off with the cup, and I'm going to be stamping it two different ways. I'm making two cards today. The first time I'm going to go ahead and stamp this outline of the cup with black dye ink. So I'm using my Misty today. This just helps me line it up. You do not need a stamp positioner. It just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that down first. Give it a good press. And then when I open it up, I've got this great coffee cup. Now this would be great to color in as its own. You could use this year round then. You could draw on your own patterns, color it up, watercolor with your alcohol markers, but I'm going to go ahead and inlay this pattern into it. So again, I've looked straight over that image. I've lined it up. Go ahead and close the lid of my Misty to pick it up, and now I'm going to stamp it with some red dye ink. This is a very dark red. It's a Christmas red. And I'll go ahead and ink up this pattern stamp here very well, and then I'll go ahead and stamp it right inside that coffee cup. Now I am using my Misty today, and this is one of those inks that gets darker the more times you stamp it, so I'm going to go ahead and give it another stamp just to darken it up. And you can see it's got this great Christmas sweater pattern on the coffee cup now. It's so fun. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and ink that up, and because I'm using my Misty, all I need to go ahead and do is close the lid of that and stamp it in the exact same position. It also fits perfectly inside that outline of the coffee cup. I'll give you a nice close-up here, and you can see it fits perfectly. So for my second cup, I'm going to stamp this a different way. I'm again starting out with the outline of this stamp, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp this in green ink. I'm going with Christmas colors here, so reds and greens. So I'll just ink that up very quickly, and then I'll go ahead and close the lid of my Misty and stamp that down onto my paper. Now I am just using white cardstock here, plain white cardstock, to do my stamping. And then I went ahead and I inlaid that second pattern that comes in the set. And I just line that up, and again I just look straight over the top of it. That's why I cut that portion out. My head's in the way and you can't see a thing I'm doing, but I just look straight over that and line it up. These are clear stamps so you can see right through it. Then when I'm happy with the placement, I close the door of my Misty. Then I can look through that, check the placement a second time, and go ahead and stamp. So once I had that stamped the first time, again I'm going to go ahead and double stamp this just to darken up that green ink a little bit. And there I've got a coffee cup that has a green outline and the green pattern in on the inside. So in the stamp set, you also get this great little steam swirl, so it looks like your coffee or whatever you're drinking is piping hot. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp this in gray ink. My gray ink was a little bit too dark for me, so I'm going to do second generation stamping, and that just means I inked it up, stamped it off on a scrap piece of paper, and then stamped it over the coffee cup. Now I'm also going to be stamping some of those holly leaves in both sizes because I am doing two different cards, and they're going to be very similar but also different in a few different ways. So this one I'm going to go ahead and stamp the larger leaves, and I did create a mask beforehand. Just one is all I needed, so I went ahead and stamped that on some masking paper and trimmed it out. And then I'll go ahead and stamp this second little holly leaf right over the top of that so it looks like they're connected. Then I'm going to go ahead and stamp two of the smaller ones. These are going to be separate, and I ended up using 3 of the larger leaves. I went ahead and stamped another one later on, and then I'm going to stamp 3 of these smaller coffee beans and 3 of the larger ones as well. I ended up using 4, so in case you want to create this card, go ahead and stamp 4 at this point too. Now these coffee beans are great to make that holly, but also you could stamp these just randomly and make a great background with them too. Just another thought. Now after I did all the stamping, I did do all the fussy cutting as well. Now I do want to say that if you buy your Joy Clair stamps Each one does come with a free SVG file if you have an electronic cutting machine, so you don't have to cut these out by hand. You do get that for free whenever you buy your stamps, which is a great feature. But if you don't have an electronic cutting machine, I don't have one, I just fussy cut these out by hand. So once that was finished, I'm doing some very quick alcohol marker coloring here. Just a dark green along the veins and then a lighter one to fill in the rest of the leaf. And I'm going to do the same thing on these smaller ones. And of course the coffee beans I stamped in brown dye ink, so I don't need to do any coloring on them. I just fussy cut them very quickly. You can also see on the green cup, I did cut off that stem. I'm going to do something different with that cup. So I just trimmed it off very easily. So on my first card, I've got an A2 top folding card base that's white, and I went ahead and cut this frame. This is an inside scallop stitched frame. I went ahead and placed that down with some fun foam and double-sided adhesive, and then I'm going to place in the green cup. I'm going to save the red for the craft frame, and I'm going to go ahead and place this green cup down. Now, like I said before, I did go ahead and trim off that stem. I knew I wanted to pop this cup up with some fun foam, so I'm going to go ahead and put the stem behind it and actually stamp it on the card base just for a little bit more dimension and kind of like a 3D effect, I guess you could say. So I went ahead and did second generation stamping again with that stem, stamped it off, then stamped it down right onto the card base, and then I'll line up that cup which has fun foam and double-sided adhesive on the back. Then I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. Now in the set you've got great builders where you can build up your own custom sentiment. I wanted these cards to be more everyday, not just Christmas, so I'm actually going to stamp with the Hello Sentiment stamp set from Joy Clair Stamps. On the bottom of this one I'm going to go ahead and stamp Sending, and I am using my Misty and black dye ink for this stamping. These are very solid sentiments, and I like to do a double stamping of these whenever I can, so that's why I pulled out my Misty. Just whenever you're doing stamping like that where you already have something popped up on your card base, just make sure the area around wherever you're stamping is clean and free of any ink that's wet, or it will transfer over onto that popped up portion. So I'm going to go ahead and put the holly leaves in these corners. I've used fun foam and double-sided adhesive to pop these up. I put the two leaves that are connected on the right hand side and two of the little coffee beans, and then on the left hand side I felt it was a little bare, so that's where that third leaf came in. I quickly trimmed it out and added two more of those little coffee beans. Now in the inside it says Sending, so I needed to finish off my sentiment on the inside, so I stamped Hugs, and that's just one of those builders from that Hello Sentiment stamp set that I used before. And then around that I'm going to stamp a few coffee beans in that brown dye ink. I believe this is Rich Cocoa from Memento. And I'm just stamping a few of these around that for a little bit of decoration on the inside of the card, and that is that card completely done. So on my next card I'm going to add a little bit of a background before I put down my cup, because I'm going to be kind of just not putting so much dimension on this card, so I wanted to add a little something extra. So I'm using Mowed Lawn ink here and just putting down a little circle of it. Now to really lighten up those edges, I did bring in just a little bit of Twisted Citron around that, just to kind of brighten it up and really lighten up and soften those edges, so it really kind of just faded out into white a little bit better. So I am just quickly doing that, and this is straight on the card base too. Again, this is an A2 white top folding card base. I used that same die I used beforehand. I just cut it from craft paper. I put adhesive straight on the back of it, and I'm going to go ahead and just put this right down onto that card base. No dimension this time. Then I'll go ahead and adhere that coffee cup, this time with a little bit of fun foam and double-sided adhesive as well. Pop that right up in the center of that green halo that I've created on the background. And this is the one where I kept the stem and fussy cut around it. I didn't stamp it in the background like I did the other one. Then on this one, for the two holly leaves and the little coffee beans, I put those right on the cup in the top right hand corner of it, just to finish that off. And I did pop those up with fun foam and double-sided adhesive as well. Next came the sentiment on the bottom of this card, and again I brought out my Hello Sentiment stamp set. I'm going to be using my Misty same black dye ink to be stamping this as well, and this one I turned into a thank you card. So right on the bottom, exactly where I stamped the other one, instead of sending, I'm going to go ahead and stamp thanks. Now you can see I did get a little bit of ink up top there, and because I have dimension on those, on the cup and also the holly leaves, I went ahead and cleaned that up before I stamped, or else that ink will transfer onto my stamped images. And then you've got to either try to get the ink off or you got to pitch your card. So it's easier just to clean it up while it's on the lid of your Misty. I went ahead and did a double stamping of that, again, because these are very solid, bold sentiments. I really like to make them nice and bold. And I went ahead and gave this a third one as well. I did want that bottom sentiment just to be a little bit thicker, so then I could come in with my white gel pen and add dashes and dots to create kind of a bubble effect or a 3D effect on that sentiment. And that finished off both cards for today. Now if you are just watching this video, be sure to head over to my blog, because there is a blog hop going on today with the entire Joy Clair Stamps design team, where we're showcasing all of the brand new stamp sets. So go ahead and hop on over there and check out the rest of the design team projects. I'm going to leave you guys with a few pictures of these finished cards. On the left side of your screen, you're going to see a few different links you can click on. The top will take you to a video you might enjoy watching next. The bottom left will take you to the supply list for this card, and the bottom right will subscribe you to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting!